Mr. John Bailey, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing okay. So it's Thursday. Obviously, we're not focusing on Evergreen here because I think stuff just happens too fast, you know?
Oh, it's
So
true.
it's,
And why not reflect
yeah,
on something that's happened in the past?
it's
Even
Thursday,
so,
October 31st, Halloween, some people's favorite holiday.
mm. Growing up in Nevada, I always knew it as the day that Nevada was admitted to the Constitution of the United States.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it was always Nevada Day. Was Halloween. So we usually got it off because it was Nevada Day, not because it was Halloween. But they changed that recently here. But that's how I grew up knowing it.
It reminds me of a friend when I was in college. Well, she was like my parents' age. So she was like 25 years older than me. And she said, coincidentally, her birthday fell on Flag Day. And Flag Day back then was a big deal, not so much today.
Sadly. Yeah.
And she turned like 8 and learned that, oh, those aren't for your birthday, those are for Flag Day. She was mortified, right? She needed therapy for years. I think it's a great story.
Putting it out for me.
We obviously have some Apple announcements this week with new products coming out, and so that's an option for us to discuss. I kind of also want to talk a little about aerospace and specifically three companies: Blue Origin, Rocket Lab, and
Mhm.
SpaceX,
Okay.
because I really think those three companies are just, I don't have time to become a market analyst, but I'm really enthusiastic about space travel. And it falls into the overall IT segment that you and I talk about, right? And biz tech and consumer electronics. It touches it all. It's really quite impressive. But yeah, have you been, it seems like there's a launch every week. Have you been keeping up with these guys? And
I mean, I saw SpaceX and the big catch.
hmm
That was amazing. Just, I don't even know. I
the
didn't think I had words
chopsticks.
to describe it, but I mean, I guess like at that novelty perspective, it definitely looked like top six grabbing it in midair. But because I've been in product development and I've thought a lot about engineering and the way that all comes together, that was a big task. That was a big thing. I mean, I think people see the end result, but there had to have been so much that went into that and
Right, right.
calculating speed, velocity, all kinds of other crap I probably don't even know about. Yeah, that was intense. And then
Yeah.
there was like a rocket that launched like some more internet satellites, Starlink. If anybody's ever seen that and wondered why there was a good streak of lights kind of beaming across the sky. I remember the first time I saw them, I was like, "What is that?"
Exactly.
And
And they
I had
have
to be in the
been,
middle of nowhere to see them too.
yeah, and they have been reported as UFOs. It's even made it onto reality TV. People tend to now we've got the Starlink constellation to misinterpret, and a surprising number of people think that the International Space Station is also a UFO. That it's aliens coming to either help or harm, one of the two.
Mm, hmm hmm
So yeah, as we put more stuff up there, right now we've got
Right.
Starlink. Starlink has almost 7,000 satellites in orbit
Pretty
currently.
crazy.
Yeah, it's just a huge number, and they're not going to stop until they get to about 12. And they even have some crazy plan for, if federal regulators allow them, they want to go to 34,000 satellites. So
Yeah, the
kind
goal
of
is global
interesting.
broadband coverage, right? Like
Yeah.
something about like just having, and that'd be great because I'm telling you right now, I do not have good coverage where I'm at, so that'd be great.
And I think a lot of people, yeah, we need to shake it up, right? We need to see some competition in that space, and entrenched players need to do a little better job.
What about Blue Origin? So they did a what was it? A human rated new the Shepard spacecraft, right? New Shepard. I
Right.
think
It
that
was a
was.
test
Hmm.
last week. They didn't have anybody in it. It was unmanned. But they pulled it out off without a hitch, and it's every bit as impressive as SpaceX when it comes back down to Earth. That was a video that I couldn't stop watching, and it didn't have the chopsticks that came out, and that was a first of its kind, right? And hopefully has everyone thinking outside the box, because it all comes, regardless of how they get that booster or that rocket part back to Earth, it all comes down to reusability. And without reusability, we can't afford to do this space race. Like we can't keep doing it the old way of, send up a $4 billion rocket and never use it again. Like and I've heard people use the analogy of, think of back in the days of Christopher Columbus. If they built a ship, it took them someplace, and then they just trashed it. They're just like, all right, not using that anymore, right? Like the affordability would not have been there. The economics of the sheer plan of exploration and buying products from one place in the world and taking them back home and selling them, and the beginnings of international trade. We never could have done that.
Yeah. Well, I think we're still in the early parts where that's kind of like what's happened anyways, but because I mean, I imagine that they probably accepted some margin of no return when they saw Columbus set sail for some far land that they weren't never sure if they was going to come back, right? Like, and
Which started the
communication, they didn't
insurance
have a,
industry in
yeah,
England. So
and they didn't have a
so there you
walkie-talkie
go.
or anything to
Yeah.
like kind of call back and say, hey, we made it. So I imagine that that then is the same as we're getting out of now, which is like sending stuff into space and trying to get it back, right? And try to recover it and reuse it. It'd be great to reuse it. Um, as we've seen in so much sci-fi in the last 50 years of being able to take off and land and still reuse a thing like the Millennium Falcon that could be abandoned for
Right.
so long and still be picked right back up. So something like that would be great for sure with the amount of money being invested in sending those things out there. I was geeked out. I don't know if aerospace we want to count even. I saw that Airbus. What was that one? What is the Beluga or whatever? Did you see that thing take off? It's like it looks like a beluga whale or like a.
Yeah,
It
it's
was
impressive.
huge, right?
Impressive public
I feel like it's a
relations for
football
sure.
field in there.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is a big one. Yeah, very, very large craft.
Saw how massive that one. I saw the launch of that, and then I know there's what was the other company you mentioned? I haven't and I want to talk about this even more so for eVTOLs as well because I know I geeked out on that a while back.
Well, there's Rocket Lab. They started out in New Zealand. Their
Mm,
CEO is a guy from New Zealand, and they're now headquartered in Los Angeles. But I like how even this early on in this modern space race, this renaissance of space travel, the companies are already choosing their niche because it's very competitive and there's only so many dollars to go around.
mhm,
And Rocket Lab has been focusing on smaller payloads of smaller satellites. And in
mm.
just a couple weeks ago, they did a launch for a French company. This French company is into the Internet of Things, which I wrote about recently on my blog on LinkedIn. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of bandwidth. You have to, what were we talking about earlier with Starlink, the service, right? You need service to be available. And so that's what Rocket Lab was helping this French company achieve.
That's cool. Wow. I mean, I think I saw that they added like a last minute like Electron launch to their manifest for this year, but yeah, I didn't. That's really cool stuff, man. Um, cool.
Yeah, and
All right.
between the three companies, it gives you a lot to track. It'll keep you busy as a hobbyist or whatever capacity your interest
Hmm.
lies in. But I don't like following just one company, right? Because then I feel like I don't really understand what the industry is doing. It's kind of like with electric cars. I wouldn't follow just Tesla. I would also follow Rivian and Lucid and anyone else who's in the game, right?
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
so I would just caution listeners, if I'm not your life coach, I know that, but if if I have any advice for you, it's just pay attention to more than just one player in a space, because it just will give you a twisted view of what's really going on, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you'll be siloed in your perspective. There's definitely a lot of other companies that are, if not the main drivers, like SpaceX or Rocket Labs or Blue Origin. There's also people that are making the technology that supports it. And I think
Correct.
that, you look at it from all sides. You look at, this is a race. This is a race to create a new option of different things from communications to travel, and of course, the ever looming question of exploring the beyond and finding out what's really out there. So, yeah, I also have friends that have brought me into curiosity a few years back into the EV tall, which are those electronic vehicle, like, like a helicopter in a sense, but not really. Like, it's like kind of like a helicopter, but it has the vertical takeoff and landing, and they have a small range, and they're improving as well. I remember before they were
And it's electric?
just, yeah, and they're electric, yeah, so they run off electric charge, and before the range was smaller, the payload was smaller. You can only carry 1 to 2 people in the early stages. I remember like SEMA years ago, maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I first saw them in person. I was like, wow, these things are really cool. And I think it was at the time where they're talking about air taxis in Japan
Hmm.
and China and stuff like that. And but they're getting better, right? Like now they're like they're using more advanced avionics. They're using propulsion technologies. Like it's an interesting and could be safe and efficient urban air like solution, right? So like we talk about going to space, but I think that we've also dreamed for a long time of flying cars, and this is kind of like what's pushing the agenda there too as well. Especially with electric cars being in, it's kind of like all coming to a head at the same time. Like we already have electric cars, cool. We are trying to challenge space, cool. What else could be more efficient on our roads? Well, if we created another layer of traffic, if you will, where people were flying, we're getting closer to those high rise, like vertical cities kind of building and getting around. And I think that's interesting in itself, right? So that's
Right.
also stuff I've been looking at.
Especially if the autonomous technology keeps progressing, which of course it's going to,
Yep.
right? That's not just for cars and
Hmm.
semis. It's also for these planes. Like I don't think I'd trust any of my neighbors on the cul-de-sac here to fly a plane. I think that they would be a
No.
public menace, and I don't want them to do it. But if they've got a smart plane, like a Robo taxi plane, right?
Yeah.
They get on their app and order their plane because they want to go see the show in Cleveland, and that use of that autonomy technology, that might be a good application for it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, especially with the not trusting your neighbor to fly a plane. So yeah, it's really cool
They can barely
advancements.
drive. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, get. That's why I want everybody to get their self-driving stuff together, because people are like, oh, it's not perfectly safe. Yeah, well, it's safer than the average human. So you know,
Oh,
most
for
most
sure.
most
Yeah.
people are not real good at driving.
It's like we've said for the past few episodes, right? Like it's just about fear, and I'm looking at it as something they don't understand or know, and they catch the headlines at best, and they make a decision and make a deduction, and it's not
Yeah,
always the best, most well informed one. So like anything we've done, I just do advocate, like, do your research, like follow these companies, look into what they're doing, see who's behind it, who's funding it, like, and learn about them. I don't think it's a bad idea to learn about all of them, and then you could find your favorite one and you follow them maybe just a little bit more, and you wear the t-shirt on the weekends. So,
right.
you know yeah, aerospace is definitely one of those sectors of technology and AI and automation and programming and microchip software and computing. There's just like giving people jobs and a lot of purpose there. It's good stuff. We're outgrowing the airlines and kind of conventional ways of traveling, and this opens up a new technological advancement that could solve our problems a lot, a lot more. And I know people argue, oh, can't afford it, or that's going to be for the elite, or whatever. It's like
In the
that
beginning,
doesn't that
sure.
doesn't and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter anyways, right? Like, yeah, of course it's always kind of been like that anyways, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, most people still can't really afford a flight unless they plan for it in some way, right? Like, it's or a road trip, like,
Right.
you got to pay for gas, you got to pay for rental, or you buy your own
Yeah.
car. And so there's just more. I just think that small level of thinking is probably not going to help us get there. you know so yeah, but
Well,
go
and
ahead.
it's why I like that behind Blue Origin is Amazon's Jeff Bezos,
Hmm.
and his financial clout and his competitive spirit. And I like that it's a really competitive space right now, because look what he's done with consumer goods and things on Amazon. Like he's gonna let us go to the moon or go to space, to the Amazon space station or whatever, don't miss the gift shop. It's on the left there.
Hmm.
And because he's just going to drive that price down, right? He's going to try to put Cardinal Cruise Lines out of business, and he probably will do it. But so I think we're going to see, yeah, the affordability of the multi-hour trip to space versus a multi-day or multi-week vacation someplace like the moon or a space
Hmm.
station. I absolutely think that as long as people like Bezos are involved, the price will come down to where the average middle class person can afford it. Like you're saying, money doesn't grow on trees, so they might have to save up their pennies for a while and budget for it. But they'll be able to do it, just like all the time you talk to people who take a 5 or 10 day cruise, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll wash out. And I don't know, maybe there still will be people that want to do the cruise thing. I don't
Well, I
personally
hope
like
they
it,
have that
but
option. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't actually want to see Bezos, put them all out of business, but it's proof that people want to spend money on activities like that, and I think that there's simply going to be more competition in that segment. Now you
Hmm.
can go, walk on the moon or visit a space station. Like it's just the whole idea of tourism and hospitality is going to expand.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's it's great to see, where we're going. So, and especially I like seeing these things in the midst of everything else that's going on, right? The noise. We have a we're gearing up, like we're closing in on election day. We still have world things going on, and it's like, okay, yes, all that things happening. I like seeing other stuff, and mostly in technology and the space, especially aerospace or computing. It definitely gives me back my warm feels.
Yeah, yeah. There's, if you, I agree that if you focus on the wrong things, it's really easy to get depressed about the whole thing, right?
Hmm.
Like, where'd I put that bottle of whiskey? Because, boy, this, doom scrolling through the news kind of thing. But as we've talked about in the past, last week we talked about how what we used to describe as a fire hose of information is now like Niagara Falls of information,
Hmm.
right? So I think to your point, if you dial in where you're getting your news, it might not be so depressing, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying you should just fall into this false reality where you never see anything challenging or bad, but there we go. Uh, but yeah, you can kind of decide. That's why I'm always a little confused when I hear people like complain about their LinkedIn feed or their X feed. Like, but you choose that. You choose to follow those accounts or be connected or whatever, right? Like that's a reflection of your choice. So if you don't like it,
Misery loves company.
something like get rid of that stuff that you're
Yeah.
complaining about so much. But um, you know, humans are famous for not knowing how to use our tools. So there you go, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think in this, right, it feels a little science fiction, of course. But I think every step, what I'm noticing the most through even all the awe and wow is that every step that these companies take, they ensure that when we do go, that they're focused still on the highest standards of safety and reliability and peace of mind, like through the whole experience. I think that's something to really take note of and sit back and watch and feel comfortable knowing that that's at the forefront of every step they're making, and that's good. That's cool stuff. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
sure, for sure.
let's segue into some cool Apple stuff. I uh, I just
Yeah.
can't stop geeking out of the M3 chip and just. I read an article headline that was really funny. It was like the most boring feature that's going to still convert me to use the to buy the latest the MacBook, and I was like, "What?" Interesting. It caught my attention. So whether or not it was relevant or not, it made total sense. But yeah, there's some cool stuff going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely cool announcements and very timely for me because I've got an aging 2018 MacBook Pro.
Okay.
So top of the line in 2018, but it's not 2018 anymore, right? And so it's starting
Yeah.
to have some little glitches here and there, and so anyway, the writing is on the wall. It served me well, and it's time to replace this thing. But when I purchased this, I lived in Los Angeles and I had a very mobile lifestyle. And now I'm a cul-de-sac kid and I work remotely and barely go anywhere. So I'm like, I don't need to invest the bucks in another MacBook Pro. I just don't need the mobility,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
this new Mac Mini is really just about perfect because several months ago when I knew I needed to buy a new computer, I started looking around and I kind of zoned in on the Mac Studio.
Mm.
Beautiful computer, right? But doesn't have the latest M4 silicon. And so now I think a lot of people who were going to purchase a Studio are going to do like me and they're going to get a mini and just jack the memory, right?
Yeah. Well, especially with the latest announcements for sure, because I think the Max 2 was pretty comparable and competitive in that sense. And I guess like I don't know, you think, yeah, I think you have to look at the difference between the M2 Ultra or M2 Max and then the M3 chip and just kind of I don't know. I guess like not everybody buys the Pro Max phone, right? Like that, and sometimes
Right,
for me it's a no brainer. Like that's my workhorse. Outside of it's an extension of if I'm somewhere and I need to get to the things and have the right screen size and have the right computing speed and right storage and everything that I get out of it and the cameras because I'm a photographer and I capture a lot of things like I need that. It's kind of like a
right.
no-brainer for me. But then when I run into somebody like that doesn't have the latest or that Pro Max, I'm just like, oh, people do buy that. And not in this pretentious way, just more or less like I forget, like not everybody's like me. Not everybody's like, doesn't need that the echelon of whatever they're offering right now. So I'm sure that some people, might maybe if I wanted to, for example, like I have children and I have them mostly on Apple devices, and I've considered kind of getting them a little bit off of their tablet and maybe back into a screen size that keeps them at a workstation. And I looked at the Mac Minis and even the Mac Studio, and I thought, my daughter's into creating things online and drawing and stuff like that, and I thought, that could be kind of fun. So maybe there's still probably a demographic for it, but if I think if you're like a us and you're technophile geeking out on this stuff, that M3 is just exciting. It's really cool,
Hmm.
and the Mac Mini, like you're saying, and it is kind of still virtual or movable if you think about it, because it's so small that
True.
for example, I have an office that I go into for this like this project I'm working on. I have a monitor there, and generally I bring my laptop. But if I had a Mac Mini, I'd bring the Mac Mini all the same. It
There you
actually
go.
probably fits
Yep.
smaller in my bag than my MacBook does, right? So yeah, maybe it's actually it's not a bad idea to even kind of be mobile, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely, I can see for all those people who maybe they go to an office, but only 2 days a week, right? A
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
a lot of these
Hybrid.
a lot of these return to work policies, yes, are very hybrid, and so they need to accommodate both work environments from home and from the office. And I know I personally I don't want to be limited to a 15, 16-inch screen on a MacBook. I know, hey, all I got to do is plunk down a 28-inch 4K monitor and now bam, I've got a whole lot more real estate. But I've been spoiled by taking that even to the next level and having either two or three large 4K monitors, right? And just not looking at that 15-inch screen at all. Just saying, no, that's really not how to do that.
Oh
And
yeah, for sure. You're right.
something like but again, if I was going mobile, when I was living in coffee shops in LA, my MacBook Pro was my best friend, right? It let me
Yes.
do anything from
Yes.
anywhere, like buttery smooth, and that's what I loved about it. Yeah, I just don't need the mobility anymore. So the fact that the latest and the greatest comes in the form of what looks like a kind of tall silver Apple TV, That's great. I'm glad it gives people in use cases where they need the mobility, the flexibility to just unplug a couple cables, throw it in their bag, and plug it in when they get to the office.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. I'm like you, the same thing. I mean, I like my MacBook, and because I travel and tend to travel even more soon, it comes in handy. But it's you're right, and I think it's weird because I think people. I don't know about you, and we're relatively close in age. Um, Growing up and having computers pretty much since, let's say, my late teens in high school, like the mid '90s, late '90s, I guess, and having at least a computer in the household. And then eventually, when I moved on my own, I had my own computer, and then laptops and computers and laptops. They never lasted really a long time anyway. So I think people have like the only thing I ever got butthurt was that I did one at one point drop a good amount of money on a 27-inch iMac back in 2011, and I love that thing, and it still very much works to this day. And it has a 3 terabyte hard drive in it. It's beautiful, but it just doesn't update to the latest software. It doesn't have the right computing chips in it and things like that. And that's
Right,
really the only limitation. And of course, because Apple's a really closed system, I can't go in there and change out the motherboard, or I can't change too
right,
much really with it. Can I change the motherboard? Yeah, but only with the most compatible motherboard for that set, right? I can't change much else, and I can't reprogram it. So it's like it's a really great paperweight on my daughter's desk that she can like browse the internet on, and limitly visit depending on what site has what kind of enhancements. Most sites that are pretty basic, so she can use it
right,
for Google, Google Drive, and some school stuff, and that's pretty much about it, because like the world's advancing, so even the browsers aren't updating anymore for that old technology.
right,
So
right,
sometimes when I hear people like, "Oh, it doesn't work anymore," I'm like, I mean, that's kind of a given. I feel like my laptop or my computer is gonna kind of be out of generation within 2, 3 years, to 5 years max. And so yeah,
right, right.
you're right at the bubble. Like I even know I'm dragging a 2020, and at that time had with the latest software, and it's still amazing. But Apple Intelligence and all the kinds of fun stuff coming, it's like
Yeah,
kind of want that stuff.
and not that everybody cares about Apple Intelligence or that's Apple's implementation of AI, folks, for those not keeping up here.
Yeah.
And it does a lot of what's called local processing. So it's doing a lot of the AI crunching on the phone, on the tablet, on the laptop, on the Mac Mini, right? And so that's one reason that Apple is pushing these new M chips, the M3 and the M4, so hard because they need that horsepower. Well, notice in all the Mac announcements this week how they raised the RAM. The basic RAM went from
Hmm.
8 to 16.
Hmm.
Hmm. Apple is notoriously stingy with their RAM, charging large amounts
Oh,
for
for sure.
for modest updates, right? It's not like on a Windows computer where you can just buy some chips on CDW and cheap and easy and plug them in and now you got twice as much RAM. Like that's not the way Apple works.
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest criticisms of Apple. I get it. Everybody's,
Mm.
everybody's got
Yeah.
their approach there. I think it just kind of changes the way you purchase from Apple. So, like you're saying, I'll get a little faster chip or a little more RAM, knowing that I can't upgrade that sucker, and I want to squeeze every month of life out of it I can.
Well, and a big seller for me, as I even ran into last night, because I generally don't want to be tethered to a cable that's charging my laptop. Plus, it's not really healthy for your batteries. You want your batteries to discharge a bit, so leaving it on the
Right.
charger all the time actually is not a good thing.
It's true.
So yeah, there's that, right? There's battery performance, and thank you, technology projects I've worked on in the past where I learned about battery life and discharge and charging rate and all kinds of fun
Right.
stuff. This one boasts up to 24 hours battery life for
Wow.
the M4 MacBook Pro. um that was why that article, the guy that said it was on ZDNet, Apple's boringly awesome reason, it was that reason. It was the battery life. It was like 24 hours. Like, like right now, and I don't know, right now you can get probably about 22 hours, less if you're like me and you're using more high output, softwares like Photoshop and Lightroom and, kinds of things like that. Like I use video editing software, like Final
Yeah,
Cut
video
Pro
editing,
and
audio,
yeah,
but
anything that's
especially
going to be
video.
pushed in that processor, battery
That's
life
the
is just
heaviest
melt.
lifting you can do, yeah.
For sure.
For
Anything
listeners not
visual.
aware, yeah, video
Yeah.
editing, if you wanna see how well a computer performs, just go edit some video on it, because if
That
something's
or
gonna bring it
gaming,
to its
man.
knees, that's
Yeah,
it.
that or gaming for sure. Both of those will just
True,
drain
true.
your battery. um,
Yep. They'll
but
test it.
so it's that. I guess there's some good enhanced Thunderbolt 5 connectivity, which has always been kind of a pain point, I think, for me, just transfer speed, because I operate out of external hard drives and different things,
Right.
and I think that transferability, man, it used to crawl in the past. It's gotten better. So I'm looking forward to that, and that's kind of like some nerd out, right? Like transferring files back and forth. I think most people probably have cloud solutions. I'm a photo guy and a video guy, so I need one 3 terabyte hard drive, 5 terabyte hard drive just for that stuff
Right,
alone,
right.
and I don't want to cloud. I mean, it's just the cost is. And I do cloud. It's weird. Don't get me wrong. I have
But
a
you can
redundancy. I have a redundancy, so I do use cloud, and I use
But you
physical
can
hard
use
drives.
local external storage like
Yeah,
on the cheap, right? You can get
yeah,
massive amounts, 4 gig, 8 gig. I see all
yeah,
these SSDs at 8 gig, and I kind of salivate. I don't really need that kind of storage right now because I'm not doing video editing. But
yeah.
yeah, as soon as you do one little thing, and oh, we're gonna take the podcast and we're gonna make it video instead of just audio. Welcome to a whole new world of computers,
Yep,
folks. Because
yep.
like, yeah, now you're going to need massive storage, and like John's saying, you won't necessarily want to go cloud based, because if you lose that connection, whereas a SSD plugged into your Mac Mini, that like wham bam, that gets it done.
I was also happy to see that the pricing is not much more different than the M3 model, or between M4 and M3 for the MacBook Pro. Seems about to be about the same price, which is 1599 starting. I guess like in the past they've been notorious for that price to go up, and this one's not. It's actually staying right about the same at the starting price, which is really cool to see, I guess. Um, and yeah, the new Mac OS and just other stuff, I guess. Again, if you're in the video, or the other one that I know of that really will drain or bog down your machine, is 3D rendering. For those
Oh
engineers
yeah,
out
yeah,
there,
true.
for anybody doing CGI or anything like that,
CAD
like
cam. Hmm.
they got to have a powerful machine. And I guess it's been optimized a lot for creatives and high demand users like that, with that 128 gigabyte unified memory. So just some memory stuff, some cool stuff. And I actually want to know too, the Apple Intelligence. I mean, if people are weird or aversive about it, also realize it's not just the AI and AI itself, but it's also um, because it's so integrated into your device. There's everything from even like something I struggle with, which is like organizing my photos. There's intelligent cleanup for photos. There's like
Hmm.
it kind of takes like some more experiential stuff for you, so like because you have those things on your, and I've noticed this already being introduced passively over the last few updates, which is like it takes your memories and kind of creates like a slideshow for you, and there's like, I guess, like more things to give you an experience.
Well, I think you're
So
you're bringing up a good point, John, because it's one thing to have a few hundred or maybe even 1 or 2 thousand photos on your device, but people like you and I, we capture a lot of images. Like
mhm.
just a couple months ago, I exceeded 50,000.
Wow.
And I was like, holy crap, 50,000. Now at that level, stuff becomes difficult to find, right?
Yeah.
So if I do a search for yellow flower California or something like that, right? Like I have a vested interest in that AI or whatever technology is being used to find that quickly, because who's got the time to scroll through 50,000 images? None of us do. So it becomes a different game at that level.
It does. And so I just want to encourage people. There's other things kind of like coming with Apple Intelligence. Like, I know the biggest pain point for Apple users, and I'll just speak for myself more so than anything, is like finding something in their mail search. Right? It's horrid. Um, so if you
Oh,
like
I
go in your
use
mailbox,
Gmail.
Yeah, yeah, I don't because like I guess like it's too first of all, there's no Gmail app on the MacBook. So immediately that's like if it's not smoothly integrated and I have to use it by browser, then it kind of like
Oh,
it's a
it's not too
third.
bad in the browser. I've never
Yeah,
had it
but I
let
have
me
to keep a
down.
tab open, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Versus
true,
a
true,
program running in the background that's a little bit more
true.
built into the software, and doesn't have that same workload. So yeah, I guess it's all about usually optimizing a RAM and processing speed, and for me, that's a big deal. Whereas like the calendar app and the mail app on Apple is actually not as higher payload as it is to keep the Google browser open,
Right,
or to like save it. You can do that where you can save it as a shortcut, and it kind of like makes it like kind of an app, but it's still really using Google browser. There's also that option as well, and I've tried it. The one thing I really liked about, I wish they had the Google app on as an app on Apple, was because I like how you could put like different kind of calendar placements on your calendar. Like you could do not just events, not just reminders, but you could put like just a focus time, or there was different things that you had options for. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, for the most part, and then I didn't want to give one person the ability to see all my emails because I'm one of those weirdos that has 10 different email accounts. And that was also that, right? Like if in order for me to see them all in one place, I'd have to either share all of them with my Google calendar, and so we get into some things there, right?
right.
That's for the most part, that's
Compatibility
why.
issues.
And if anybody uses the native mail app for Apple, one of the pain points is that's getting cleared up with Apple Intelligence is searching for a piece of mail, searching for something that,
Cool.
because like it is very broad stroke right now. Like if I searched social, I don't know, say it's like a business contract and it was like license agreement or something, and I'm just trying to use, unfortunately, those broad terms, it would pull every mention of license agreement across like anything that
Right.
ever. And it's like, okay, like I got to get very specific. I got to say a name. It's not fun. And so it's stuff like that. Stuff like that's supposed to get improved, is starting to get improved by Apple
Well,
Intelligence
and
more or
that's
less.
a big deal,
Yeah.
because if that's the email you're using, I live and die by email. I hear you.
Hmm.
I gotta go find something that a client. I'm like, where's XYZ? And they're like, well, I sent it to you 2 months ago. Like, and the burden is on me, right? The client's always right. So this is kind of a big deal. And even though these changes in how you find images or email or calendar events is if that's too difficult to do, then that's not a good service. So I think this kind of mechanical improvements that they're making to a certain extent with Apple Intelligence are important, and they're going to smooth out the workflow experience for a lot of people like you.
Yeah. Um, I want to get one of the. I like this Mac Mini. I have weird questions. I have weird questions like, will it work well with my external keyboard? Because I don't generally like the Apple keyboard. Because I like a more tactile, clickety clackety.
Hmm.
I fit in that bucket of people, and so like I want that keyboard, or I want like my mouse, or
Right,
my screens, and I'm just kind of curious of it because I know that most times that Apple system is built in an ecosystem to be most optimized with their products.
right.
How it
Yeah, yeah.
how it starts to break down if you start to connect your own peripherals, and your own devices. That's probably where I'm gonna test it and see what it's capable, like if there's any breakdown, if it stays relatively fluent.
I
um
just I like the financial side, the economic side of the Mac Mini because
mm,
okay, so back to if I still lived in LA or I lived in Chicago or New York or any big city where I was just, mobile, very mobile, right? And so getting another MacBook Pro would totally make sense to me. And that's always been, once you improve the memory and, yada, yada, that's at least a $3,000 proposition,
yep.
right? It, and it might be closer to four. It just depends on how people dial that stuff in. We all got a budget. We all have things that we got to have. But then I look at the Mac Mini, and I can do it with 24 gig of memory for $1,400, and I'm
Mm,
like, again, it burns me that Apple wants another $400 to take it to 48 gig of memory to double it. And I'm like, man, with all this Apple Intelligence and other AI services, like, I don't know, maybe I should do that. But then I go back up to the big level, and at the big level, this is 1,400 or maybe 1,800, but it's a sub $2,000 decision. Whereas if I was replacing my MacBook Pro, it would be a 3,000, maybe $3,500 decision. Well, that's like half price, right? Or less. And once the numbers skew like that, now I'm kind of thinking about changing my whole computer purchasing and upgrade strategy and not doing this 5 or 6 year, but saying, no, it's such a more affordable device that at something like 1,400, do that every 2 years. Just every 2 years, whatever the most recent one is, bam. Kind of like people do with smartphones, right?
yeah. No, they do. It's came to that. But the Mac Mini,
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely gives you I guess a little bit more. Well, again, it comes down to your feature set. It comes down to like what your use case is. And yeah, I like that you're considering that direction. You actually put me back on that direction. I remember I had this conversation probably about 6 months ago with somebody, and looking at my MacBook, seeing the early announcements of what was coming for the iPhone and the iMac and the Mac Minis. I was like, oh, well, I got some options here. And to be fair, I don't like my desk setup right now most times because I have another stand for my Mac or my MacBook to be, to connect to things, but then also I can see it. Because it's funny you say like I barely, you use it or barely use it depending on the screens you're on. I have it and I use it. I just more or less, it's funny. When I have it open, it just has my email up or my calendar or like my messengers. I think I just keep that small window for all of those,
Right.
and then everything I do on the big screens is like more my work stuff. And so, but to another sell feature for me looking at it is to condense the real estate of my desk, my workspace.
Mm-hmm.
That thing is really sleek and small. It's actually smaller than has been in the past. Because I remember I used to have one. I was telling you earlier today, like I used to have one around the same time I had that iMac back in 2011, and I use it like as a kind of like a RAID server in the house, like a digital server. Because back then, we didn't have all these streaming sites, so I had a lot of
And it
digital
was
movies.
it was small, and now the new one's like half
It
the
was fairly
size.
small. Yeah, it was like maybe the
So
small of a modem, or
yeah,
something like that. So it wasn't that bad. And
exactly.
yeah, and
Yeah,
so
large hockey puck.
yeah, and so this one's even smaller. I was like, and still
Yep.
powerful. Like that's cool.
Well, and I like that they upgraded the ventilation system too. It's basically a mini version, no pun intended, of the studio, right? With the
Hmm.
way the studio is slightly elevated on that little platform on the bottom, and that's all about bringing in fresh air to keep the chips cool. So, because I always thought that was kind of an innovative feature of the studio, so it seems like that's getting sort of baked into Apple's Mac DNA.
Yeah, and so yeah, what goes on sale like November 7th, right? When it starts, or November 8th, it starts shipping.
Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, even the beastie one, 10 core, 24 gig, 512 gigabyte, it's barely at 1,000 starting.
I
It's
know.
not bad.
Yeah. It just the price and it's true. Yeah, and I complain about it on a fairly regular basis, like most Americans who have any Apple products. It's like, oh, it's expensive. They want how much for the pencil, and
The pencil.
like, yeah, yeah, sometimes your mind, the mouse is up to like $110 now or something, and so there's just certain things that'll kind of blow your mind. But this Mac Mini, if you don't need mobility, and even if you do, back to John's use case of you got monitors at home, you got monitors at the office, and all you do is take this little box and stick it in your briefcase, and you're good to go, right? Super super easy, and it would work every time. That would be a seamless, beautiful solution. But considering that you can get these for starting at 600,
Mm-hmm.
Already, I've seen videos on YouTube where they're like, "Buy the 600 entry level. Here's why." And then you find people who are like, "No, no, no, spend 4,000. Here's why." Like everybody's got a perspective. I'm not, saying anybody's right or wrong. I don't think there's any right or wrong to how much money you spend on your stuff. We try to spend as little as possible and get as much performance as possible. It's simple,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's like hopefully you're doing your research, or if you don't know, you find your nearest tech geeky guy and you ask them. I'm honored to know that a lot of people come to me asking me for my my guidance. And yeah, I just find it's a series of questions. What do you use it for? How often you use it? How many hours a
Right,
day? Da, da, da. We can get down to the nitty gritty, and it's like, oh, okay, because they'll be like, somebody told me I should get this one with this and this. I'm like, yeah, somebody just told you what they would like, right? Like that's not what you
right.
need. You don't need that, you don't. That's not, it's not for you. And it's good that I think point people in the right direction of finding out what works for them and what
You
they
need a
really need.
liquid cooled Alienware. It's the
Oh my
size of
gosh.
a Samsonite. Okay, it's a little big, but it's liquid cooled, peeps. How cool is
50
that?
cool, yeah, 15 terabytes with this dual fan and liquid cool. It just, yeah, it gets crazy. So,
And again, that's a great marketplace. Like, here I am on the verge of getting the new Mac Mini, not one of those liquid cooled Alienwares that I
mhm.
think are super cool computers. And I really like them. But I just like that, the marketplace is mature enough that you can dial it in wherever you want. If you're a gamer, if you're just a business user, if you're creative, if you're doing video editing, if you're mobile, if you're not mobile, you can dial in each one of those use cases and do it on a budget if you're smart about it.
I agree. I agree. Yep. So exciting to see when these roll out. I'm gonna probably making
On
some good buyer decisions over the next few months based on
You're
it.
right. Comes out on November 8th, and yeah, you can dial it in starting at 600, and I think I'm gonna do the $1,400 one just because then I won't sweat over the RAM not going with 48 because I'll know that I'm gonna upgrade it in 2 years anyway. So
Yeah. Wow, 2 terabyte can be up to 600. I guess that's you need a lot of local storage. And they have a
eggs
10 gigabit Ethernet. Hmm.
Yeah, if I start doing video work, and I love video editing, I think it's really fun, and so I'm obviously kind of looking for ways to get into that. Yeah, I would just buy a bunch of local storage, and um, like it
I
hurts
just added
enough.
all the best things and it's like 18.99.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, yeah. It's still, and again, you do that with a MacBook Pro, and you're going to get this price that's well above 3,000. So that's why I'm used to buying MacBook Pros. So every time I see the total price on a Mac Mini, I'm like, wow, that's a really good deal.
Hmm.
It makes me want to be an impulse shopper, but I'm kind of like you. I do quite a bit of research first.
For sure. Well, I'm definitely excited about that. Thanks you for bringing up this topic today. Um, Now I'm reconsidering the MacBook Pro because I mean mine's not even that old, so I probably still have a couple years before I'd really look at the new MacBooks, but we'll see. Yeah, you got me in the shopping zone here. I didn't want to be here. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I say, I sort of got to be because this thing is on its last leg. Like if next week I went to boot it up and it did not boot up, I would not be overly shocked. So I'm like, okay, might be time to make the jump.
For sure. Yeah.
But always nice to see stuff. I can't believe the M chips are up to generation 4, right? It seems like the M1s just came out. Uh, it's crazy, but they keep pushing it forward, and now we understand a little better. One of the biggest reasons they keep pushing that silicon forward and doing things like raising memory limits is the Apple Intelligence, right? That
Hmm.
AI, particularly when you're doing local processing, is resource intensive. Period. right? It's a really simple equation, but look, it's interesting to see how it's kind of trickling down through Apple's products and their pricing and just everything they're doing.
Yeah, it's very cool. But you're right, it did move kind of fast. Like I said, I have an M1 at 2020, so in 4 years they've jumped four iterations, I
Yeah, it's
guess,
crazy.
practically.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
begs to wonder
definitely.
if you have the M2, do you need the M3? If you have the M3, do you need the M4? I think that's probably where people are going to look at and see. That's when the conversation goes, do you need the latest, shiniest new thing? Or are you just really looking at what you
Or do you
got?
just want to go to the Apple store and spend money? Because that's
Yeah.
cool too.
Yeah,
That's
it's cool.
cool. I know
So
people where that's their hobby, right? So it's
cool flex.
keeps you busy, keeps you busy. But yeah, a lot of cool tools for smart creatives, smart business professionals to dial in their computer workstation or workstations. Like we were saying, a lot of people in a hybrid remote work situation where they're home 2 or 3 days a week and at an office 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah, I can agree more. And that versatility is it's hard to find in kind of like the other products that is seamless, right? That's seamless. Like let me be clear. It's not hard to find another laptop. It's not find another tablet or another even desktop machine or something that works that way. I've seen them, and Google makes the smaller kind of like a Mac Mini scenario that's affordable for people. Again, it goes into looking what you need. I just know there's so much less hiccup with the things I do when I just have these devices that are kind of like intertwined with each other. There's no real overthinking. One of the coolest features I use, to be honest, is oddly is the copy and paste, where I can copy something on my MacBook and I can paste it on my phone without
Yeah,
that's like it's just weird stuff like that that makes my what I do, because I'm always on the go. I'm always creating content, making notes in a meeting, booking a calendar thing or pulling something up using AI, right? There's so many things that I'm just like I have to have that quick versatility or it compromises my ability to produce. And
right,
so yeah, it's what I say that with a grain of salt. I want to be like total Apple fanboy. It just works for me. For creators, I think I find most times it's the people that are in photo, video, gaming, or not gaming, so to speak, but more or less like if you're engineering and things like that, I think it just works out the box and that really helps. Whereas
right.
there's other options for other people doing other things, don't take our word for it, do the research. I sadly don't have enough radar on other stuff that's going on with other companies. I think that's the only thing I just realized in our advice earlier about the aerospace is like, wait, I don't keep a big pulse on other companies, competing machines and what they're doing. Could be cooler. I don't know. That'd be great. We had some listeners join in and raise their hand and one of these and bring their maybe outside the box expertise, because that'd be cool. Um yeah, I just
Yeah.
not. What about you? Do you watch the other guys? Alienware and well, Alienware is now who's
Well,
it bought by?
I
Microsoft?
try Alienware. It's owned by Dell.
Oh, Dell,
Yeah.
that's right.
Um,
Yeah.
I try to tap into tech centric, consumer electronics centric media outlets like The Verge, Engadget, Wired. The typical tech stuff. And I feel like between those, I don't fall too far behind, right? Do I know exactly what's going on in terms of Android? Heck, I barely know exactly what's going on in terms of the operating system on my iPhone or my MacBook, right? Like back to your earlier point, John, I just know that it works, right? And it doesn't
Hmm.
impede my workflow and it lets me have a certain fluidity. And one thing I do preach to people, I get a bit opinionated in saying that it's nice to be part of an ecosystem. So it doesn't matter who you choose. Choose Google, choose Samsung, choose Apple, choose Alienware, choose Microsoft. Just you can dial it into to however you want, but having the fluid interoperability of devices like smartwatches, smartphones, laptops and desktop computers, tablets, that's really, when done properly, that
Hmm.
is a beautiful thing, right? And no, I don't necessarily want to answer a call on my watch, but just knowing that if I, left my phone in the bathroom and I'm having a senior moment and I can't freaking remember it, then I can do it on the watch. Just that it's just options. It's that enhanced flexibility. That's what I like. Yeah. So I also do not self-identify as an Apple fanboy because I just, I found something that works, and thankfully they're not forcing me to drop $4,500 on the latest MacBook Pro. I have options like a Mac Mini at between $1,000 and $2,000.
Yeah, for sure. Because it comes down to like who's at least making the strides and bringing out these new technologies and really pushing the envelope. And it just so happens that Apple does it a lot. I would I've been wanting for a long time. Really was and I hate to say the words in my house because it'll activate a device somewhere, but Siri or Alexa, right? Like either one of them. Um, would be great if they just got better sometimes. They just aren't like
Right.
and I think Apple Intelligence now has made that leap to be faster than it was because I have
Yeah.
a lot of those devices. And now I did see a headline that they are looking to develop more conversational AI powered Alexa
Yep.
and aiming to create like her to be like true or yeah, her to be truly context aware as an assistant. But it's like, where are they? Because we already have what we've seen in demos with Siri and what's going on there. So it's like um, it's a race. It's a race. And we
Yeah.
gotta. I mean, so we can watch the headlines all day long, but it's really whoever puts it in my hands first generally is the winner. And it just so happens, Apple's win the game a lot in those kind of things. But yeah,
Yeah, I do think Apple Intelligence will improve Siri a lot. I do believe Alexa's going to get a lot better, and there's lots of ways to kind of unpack that whole issue. And one of them is just, okay, we've got AI, and we're not necessarily migrating away from text prompts, but we're adding a bunch of voice navigation to it. And some people don't want text prompts. So, okay, certain services will allow them to interact almost completely with voice, right? And
hmm
so I think that, and then we take a look at the bigger picture and say, oh, well, we already have these voice services that are quite popular and available on tens of millions of devices called Siri and Alexa and Cortana and et cetera, and it's just kind of like the back end of those voice navigation front ends is just going to be more AI, faster everything, like you're saying, more responsive, more fluid, able to match our emotions, and a lot of other things that we choose to configure it as.
just things to make my life a little bit easier. I saw also one last tech thing. Have you heard of this Roborock?
Mm-mm.
Roborock. They have the S8 Max V Ultra Vacuum. It's a robot vacuum, and it's kind of like I don't know. You've seen the movie Wall-E, but there's like a little robot. He goes
Yeah.
around and just cleans up,
Hmm.
right? It's like that, I guess. Like it's like a robot vacuum, and they're sending this thing to space to test its performance in extreme conditions, zero gravity, temperatures below negative 60 degrees, and the vacuum successfully completed the mission. It demonstrated
Nice.
like durability, advanced functionalities like automatic emptying and intelligent dirt detection in these environments. Like not only are we trying to go to space, but we're also trying to make sure that we have
And
the vacuum that's automatic in space with us, so we don't have to do
and for our
much.
listeners, this is proof that this show is not just tossed together, right? We brought
No.
it all the way back to space. Yes, look for your favorite vacuum company. It'll be a Dyson SpaceX
Dyson
collab,
space.
right?
Yeah. Kansas work and everything now is going to be battle tested in space. So keep an eye out on that. Like
Oh,
Ninja. better step your game up because I better see blenders in space soon. You know, that kind of thing is happening, it seems.
I think it's great, and, because we have so many more launch missions going up right now, that's a lot more space, right? And I'm not trying to that's not a pun, that's a lot more room for satellites or people or, you know, robot vacuums that we wanna see if they can survive 60 below. Right? But you gotta
Yeah.
have the space activity, and that's why I've been so happy about, like, almost every week, there's one or more launches going on between, major and minor players. So,
Hmm.
so that just means a lot more experiments, a lot more activity, and that we're building. I think we're basically in an infrastructure building phase, right? Where uh, the satellites going up every week are a big part of that. But I mean, the International Space Station is supposed to be decommissioned in 2030. So what's going to replace it? Well, I think a company like SpaceX or some sort of collection of space companies working together might want to have something where they don't have to answer to NASA.
Yeah,
They
for
might want
sure.
their own, and
Yeah.
if Wall Street gets behind it and pays for it, well, then so I think, yeah, right now we're just filling the skies with satellites and getting people to report UFOs, and when they see satellites and say it's fun. I really like that part of this culture. That's got to keep it kind of entertaining, right?
Yeah. No, it's definitely entertaining. Lots of things to watch and see and what applies to you. And it's good to see even I made light of the robot vacuum thing. But I think it's necessary. I think that there's a lot of not only devices we use, but overall, like as you said, there's more space, pun intended, that well, those things also have to carry a payload, right? So the more weight added, the more you have to think about it's not just carrying people, it's carrying people and their stuff.
Right,
So it's like, we gotta, and then it's carrying their stuff in a zero vacuum,
right.
harsh environment. And what will that do? I mean, there's some things that I know that I brought on airplanes and then it got home and it got to my destination and exploded in my bag because of pressure. So it's like
Right.
that, those things definitely please do that because we don't want, that to learn that trial by error as the early consumers. So I'm good to see. It's good to see the companies are going to push that envelope and get that out there. That's an. I mean, when that use case is going to show up might be, I don't know, 10 years from now. Let's put a number on it. I guess we're advancing pretty rapidly though. So just cool stuff, man. Real cool stuff. And that was interesting to see it and bring it back to space.
Yeah, yeah. Some of I wish I had more time to keep up with it because some of the experiments, especially science experiments and botany experiments, are really quite amazing and quite creative. And then
Hmm.
to actually have the technology to pull it off, right? To take stuff up to zero G or the vacuum of space and, measure how it responds. It's one thing to plan it, but if you can actually pull it off, you're doing some neat stuff.
It's pretty cool stuff. And it looks like the old what was that? It's a Robo vacuum. I used to have one. I don't remember its name. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. And I don't know if they actually shot it into space. I think they brought it just to space atmosphere, our upper atmosphere scenario. But still cool. Why not?
They just like opened a window and tossed it out. They're just like, be free.
Be free,
Oh,
vacuum
look.
stuff.
Oh, look, it caught on fire during reentry. Maybe we should have read the contract. Yeah.
Make sure you put that in the user manual. It's a liability. Disclaimer. This can blow up if on reentry.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of re-entering, we've been doing this for a little over an hour now, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And for those of you who are new to this, we are the new podcast, Curt and John Talk Tech and AI, where it's just like today. We talk about a variety of business and consumer technologies, and we talk about artificial intelligence quite a bit. Today, we kind of replaced some of the AI talk with space nerd talk, which
Mm.
I always kind of like that. And there's a lot of areas like that for us to nerd out on. In the future, we need to talk more about quantum computing and how that affects AI, and then how do you power the quantum computers? Do we use nuclear power plants? Like, there's a lot of elements here where it's very technical. It's economically and from a regulatory perspective very complicated, and so plenty of opportunities for us to dig into those topics and reference other smart people also tearing down these topics, whether they're on podcasts or writing articles. But this obviously, there's a lot of people making all this happen, whether it's space travel or artificial intelligence, and so we'll help you keep up on it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I just think this episode and many of our episodes, it's really shedding a spotlight on how, like, from all this cutting edge performance in our laptops or smart devices to through intelligence and even beyond, shows how fast our everyday tools are transforming. These companies, Apple, Amazon, unexpected players like Robo, right? They're pushing boundaries. We're seeing technology enhance convenience, but also redefine what's possible. And I don't know. I just think whether it's more powerful, intelligent, or adaptable, the future of tech is about making every interaction smoother, more seamless. That's my keyword, like seamless, and more human
Yeah,
centered. So it's cool. It's cool stuff. I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation next week.
awesome. Well, thanks again, John, for coming by. Again, we are the Curt and John Talk Tech and AI podcast. We happen every Thursday during a live capture on X, formerly Twitter Spaces. And we talk for about an hour or so, and then we put that out on all major podcast networks.
Yep.
So, so thanks again, John. I'll talk to you next
Thank
week,
you.
buddy.
Appreciate it. And next week it is. See you
All
then.
righty.
Okay.
See ya.